Good morning, everybody. I just wanted to put another video out there today. We're into May, and I just kind of wanted to go over some of the things we're having success with, some of the things we're working on improving here at Hawkins Farm and Harvest, and some of the farm stand updates and community bundles that we got started with. So I'm just in my wash and pack here, which I finally got going for last Saturday's farm stand. So with the farm stand, as I've mentioned before, we put it out kind of by the road, and we open on Saturdays, and it's a bunch of local vendors, as well as the seasonal produce and seedlings that we have available. But something that we had a lot of success with was the community harvest bundles. So basically we found a local egg vendor, a local sourdough bread baker, and then packaged that together each week with some produce, local goods, and offering that to the community on a weekly basis, kind of like a CSA or co-op. But what we're doing now, because I'm in the first year and getting all of this off the ground, it's no commitment. So order weekly, and ideally I can kind of keep up with the demand. But I was super excited. We've already had close to 10, I think we've had 8 or 9 bundle orders so far. So this week being our biggest, we've had 6 orders. And folks have said a lot of great things so far. So it was really fun to go out and harvest Saturday mornings. So we're kind of doing like a Tuesday night cutoff on orders. And then Saturday mornings I go out and harvest fresh all of the salad, lettuce, whatever greens we have available. The first week we did bok choy and a lettuce mix and a bunch of herbs from the garden, snap peas, and this week we'll have some other fresh stuff like celery, Swiss chard coming up, more snap peas. I've planted a new succession of lettuce. So here in Georgia we're testing what crops are going to grow well in this heat that we have here in the summer. And it is starting to get warm. Today we're up to 85, tomorrow 88, and then of course it kind of levels out in the 70s, but it does get hot here, so it's testing which crops are going to do well. I've ordered from Johnny's some of the most heat tolerant versions of broccoli, cauliflower, lettuce, carrots, things like that that we can keep going throughout the year without worrying too much about the heat. So with that said, I've actually just planted some new lettuce seeds today for the summer. But I've struggled with germination in the greenhouse because it does actually get up to close to 100 degrees in the greenhouse. So I'm gonna put these in the basement, in our basement, which stays like in the 60s, even in the summer. And since I'm not concerned about the light, I just wanna get those to germinate there, and then I'll get them back in the greenhouse. So we're in the wash and pack. Again, I got that set up Saturday based off of a lot of YouTube videos you've seen. Tanner, I'm forgetting, I think it's Tanner Homestead or Tanner Farm Stand, I think it's Homestead, but he kind of showed a good setup, so I actually did something similar. I went with Farmer's Friend for the bubbler. This worked great, other than I had a little mishap with it fitting directly into my 110-gallon bucket, so I might have to trim some of the PVC. I don't know if I got it all the way hammered in, but regardless, it worked great, didn't float up or anything. It worked really well. So got started with that, and then we went with the Panda wash spinner, which actually worked fantastic. I'm not on a huge scale here, so washing the amount of lettuce we wash right now, that was perfect and a very affordable way of doing that. So thank you, Tanner Homestead, for that pick. And I know he's already moved up to the new Never Sink salad spinner. So I would love to do that eventually, but we'll start here and see how it goes. And then also built the drying rack, which this just worked out really well. Kind of had to just finagle some things together, but I've got my screen where I place everything after I spin it, 2 fans above, and it honestly worked perfectly. It was great. And then our commercial fridge is set up where I store all my seeds and produce once it's bagged and labeled. So that worked really well as well. So the wash pack station I'm very, very happy with. And then for now at the farm stand, I take everything in the cooler down to the farm stand just for what we need to put out for folks to see. Eventually it would be nice to put a refrigerator down there, like a glass door, but getting power there is going to be a little bit tricky. So we'll get there when we get there. I'm going to go ahead and walk you guys through the garden, show you what's growing, and we'll go from there. So as we're walking over to the gardens too, I'll show you guys, I've got the first daylily bed in down here by the road by the farm stand. So this is the same 4.5 foot wide bed. Stretches about 100 feet, maybe just over 100 feet, and this is where our first 500 daylilies will go and be planted, which are coming in about a week. So I'm excited about that. And then we have another Farmer's Friend field irrigation kit that's going to be set up here, which will not only, the reason we went with it instead of drip was It'll water the daylilies, but it'll also water these mounds where we're gonna have our flowering plants and many of the fruit trees and stuff. So it just helps cover a lot of ground there. So that bed's in, that was a lot of work, but again, a lot of free cardboard, a lot of free resources, a lot of cardboard from the post office, and then free mulch from a lot of local arborists and tree cutters and landscape companies and whatnot. So that's been really helpful to use for compost and between the rows and really wherever I need to fill in. So we've got all of this kind of going. I'm excited to get that planted. And I have 3 beds going between each mound. So 3 here, and then the plastic up there is starting its process of kind of killing back the grass and getting that set up. And then we have a lot of peaches coming in. Not sure if you can see it from this clip. I'll cut to another clip here, but excited to see all those peaches. So as we're making our way to the garden, I'm kind of just walking around the property a little bit. Everything continuously is changing this time of year as a lot of the wildflowers have come up, and I was really excited to see this mix here on our lower farm basin doing really well. We just went around the whole bank with wildflowers, and I didn't fight too hard to get rid of the grasses and things that were there because basically when I dug the pond, I poured all the dirt from inside onto the banks, so a lot of it wasn't growing quickly. And it was very patchy, so I went ahead and just threw that wildflower seed down, and it's done really, really well. We've got poppies. Honestly, I don't even know all the varieties of flowers that are in here, but it's doing well. There's some vetch mixed in there, a lot of different colors, purple, yellow, orange, white, and I believe most of that mix is perennial, and there's a flower for every season, so that's a lot of fun, brings in the pollinators. And we've also put 4 fig trees along the bank just for fun. They were in the greenhouse. They do well outside down here. They grow very, very well. So we'll be excited to get some figs. And then moving over to our mulch piles. Again, I'm getting a lot of mulch drops. So that's been super helpful to prepare for all the pathways. And then also I'm taking some of that to add to our compost piles and add wherever we kind of need to kill back the grass, but also for continuous compost and pathways. So while we're talking about compost here, I'm just walking over to the piles, and I have one that's ready for this fall or later this summer as we need it. And then our new pile, which is started here. And I've had some great response from the local community. We're doing our best to keep everything clean, herbicide free, you know, just clean organic matter for these piles. So most of what we have is the wood chips, grass clippings from here, vegetation from the garden that goes on, that's all our nitrogen, and then a leaf pile from last year, which we get an abundance of leaves here on the property. And we do have folks bringing in some horse manure, so we do our very best to keep that as clean as possible and kind of source where that's coming from. But some great local support, and then also some local food scraps and whatnot to continue adding to these piles and reuse that material. So that's been great. And then this pile's actually been at 140 degrees for about a week now. So that's a great way to kill down the weed seeds, get that thing cooking. And that's a great temperature to be at as this decomposes faster. So excited about that. And then here's the other pile that'll be ready this fall. It was basically ready to go, but I did notice some weeds growing out of that. So I went ahead and added some more grass clippings. Just to try to get that back up to temp. I've got it about 125 degrees. I'm gonna add more just to get that to 140. That's where you want it to be to kill a lot of those seeds before I throw that on the garden. So I'm kind of getting in the routine of keeping these compost piles moving and having the right combination of air and water and learning from last year's mistakes and whatnot. So it's really just a consistent addition and then making sure you're turning those, which I do probably every 2 to 3 weeks with the tractor bucket, and keeping that temperature up for a decent amount of time just to get that pile killing off the bad bacteria and the weed seeds. So those are the compost piles, and they're looking really good. So to kind of get to the bulk of this video, it's really revolving around succession planting, and what I've had to kind of do and think about with the gardens as things are growing very, very quickly, needing to be harvested, and then beds needing to be turned over and prepared with the new crop. So it's been a big learning curve this year. It's going fine. There's nothing major, but to make sure that we have enough produce for obviously the family, and then our bundles is making sure that these beds are consistently full, which I would say is one of the tougher parts about this. Just knowing when to plant in the greenhouse, seed new trays, and then get things moved out in a timely manner. So everything's growing fantastically. Some things I see where there needs to be improvement on the actual soil in these beds, and also the spacing of what I'm putting in there. But really happy with the new beds this year, which had a really healthy compost on top. A lot of nitrogen in there, maybe even too much for the tomatoes, but that's not a huge deal. These are the outdoor tomatoes. The ones in the greenhouse I'll show you guys are doing well too. Squash coming up fantastically. Watermelon, we've got the Three Sisters in the back with the corn, beans, and squash. All types of summer squash, kind of heirloom varieties. And then this is the tomato basil peppers, and I put leeks in between the basil as well to kind of help with some of the pest pressure. I'm actually very impressed with limited pest pressure so far. I would say most of it I'm noticing on the Swiss chard. So I think that we have a fair amount of birds coming in and taking care of things. And I'm actually going to add, we painted a bunch of bird houses that we're going to place around the garden, which I'm hoping will help. But we have a lot of birds moving through here. And another thing that's been tricky for myself is knowing when to just pull a crop or give up on a crop if it's kind of taking up space and you kind of, you know, it's gone to seed or something like that. Obviously there's benefits to having that plant flowering and bringing in pollinators or whatnot, but for the sake of keeping things moving and keeping fresh produce coming in, I've had to kind of convince myself with certain areas to just remove, learn from those mistakes, and get another crop in the ground. Also, we've laid some plastic down, and I've kind of maintained this plastic for managing some weeds in the pathways. I'll probably end up getting a silage tarp for using on the beds when we turn them over to kind of get rid of any remaining weeds. But weeding has been something in the first year here that's a continuous thing, to just get everything tamed and then continue adding organic matter to kind of push that down, and cardboard. So I've gone ahead and laid where some weeds were coming up in the pathway, laid this plastic down, and we'll continue moving that down the pathway, adding fresh cardboard and mulch just to continue beating that back. So weeding is a time-consuming thing, and we're doing everything we can to just take some of the pressure off by getting it while it's young. And I can also already see where I want to add more beds. We've got plastic laid in some different areas where I know I'm going to add beds, but the space surprisingly fills up so quickly, and I can see us already with these bundles I think are going to be a really good hit for the community. I'd like to have plenty available to continue doing what we're doing, so definitely adding more beds in the near future. So that's one thing. And then another thing, kind of as a way of looking at our homestead and our farm and our business as a all-inclusive kind of closed loop system for the most part, we try to look at things like compost and using our gym space and all the different avenues we can use our property. And one thing that I saw that I think would be beneficial not only for the gardens but for the local community to get into is worm composting and having a worm farm. So I think in this space here behind the greenhouse, we're going to try the wedge system, which is using some plywood walls with a pile of compost that you add fresh compost to weekly. Keep that moisture up and add, 6 to 10 pounds of worms into that area. So you're taking the worm castings from the back of that plywood on a regular basis and continuing to add to those piles as something really beneficial in the microbial department to add to your beds, and also something that we can sell to the local community. So I watched some videos on that with no-till growers on how to kind of get started in a small scale way. So it's all going fantastically here. Definitely a big learning curve this year and plenty of work on a daily basis. As of now, we're just trying to find ways to turn this into a more, dare I say, full-time endeavor where we can just allow this property and what we do here to be kind of our source of income and whatnot. But for now, it's a lot of practicing, playing around, and building gardens and weeding and harvesting. So it's all good. But thank you guys for supporting. Thanks for taking a little walk around the property with us here this May in Georgia. It's a wonderful overcast day. And we'll send you guys an update here soon. Always reach out if you have questions. I'm happy to chat with you guys about what I know and don't know. And this is, again, our first year really growing produce on this kind of scale. And it would be wonderful to have more folks doing this in their backyard and practicing on a small scale and, you know, offering some of that to your family and your local community. So if you have questions, please reach out. But thank you for supporting.